you're participating whether you like it or not. You're in drag right now.
Exactly. At the clinic, I like to do my old man drag. I have my little cardigan.
Yes. I'm Dr. Tyler Hendricks. I'm a board-certified family medicine physician. Nice to meet you all.
Nice to meet you.
So thanks for coming on the podcast today.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Yeah, so I just kind of want to give a little background on how I actually found ASHwell. So one of our marketing team members mentioned that you were promoting a drag event that was happening for Mistress Isabel Brooks. I think she was going somewhere, and you had tickets. And this is like maybe when like the third or fourth episode of Drag Race had come out this season, and she knows that I'm obsessed. So she forwarded me your information, and not only was I obsessed with the event idea, but I just saw your Instagram and thought this was such a great organization. It looked very interesting to me. So I wanted to reach out, and then here we are today. So I'm so glad to have you. If you just want to tell us a little bit about yourself and kind of what you do and then how you are affiliated with ASHwell.
Okay. I'm a registered nurse, have been for about 32 years already.
Awesome.
Beloved. And I was volunteering with Austin All Prep Access about... it's like getting 7-8 years ago. And so just through volunteering with clinics, I was volunteering at ASHwell.
Yeah.
And then they said, hey, we need a full-time nurse. Come on over. And I was a patient. I love PrEP because it helps protect, us from HIV. And back in the day, when I first was a new grad, HIV was, really a killer.
Right.
And it's changed so much now to where, it's diabetes is worse.
Right.
Yeah,
That's
and
crazy.
so
Yeah.
People who are living with HIV will die of heart disease and stroke and all of the things that everybody dies of.
Right. Exactly.
And so it's really nice to see in my lifetime the change of, and so people can embrace who they are, their sexuality. And so when I was offered a chance to come on board from volunteer to full-time staff person, I just jumped at it.
For sure. My first experience with PrEP, I was in medical school living in Atlanta, Georgia. I was in a committed relationship, but still from a Southern Christian upbringing, had a lot of guilt and shame around sex, and sex equals HIV. That was sort of drained into my head at a young age. And so I found PrEP to be this way of feeling as though I could be free in my relationship. Even though we were monogamous, I still had fear that something could happen, And so it was maybe 2012 or 2013, and I went to a local clinic because I'd actually just seen like research articles published about it, and it was just becoming a thing. It was becoming popular on medical and the medical literature side. So I went to my primary doctor, and he's like, I have no idea what that is, never heard of it before. And that made sense. It was early on, but I still kept seeing that trend till probably like 3 or 4 years ago, when people would be like, my doctor still doesn't know what PrEP is. And I still am that limited access to the general, population. I think what has changed, really, a lot of education came out during the pandemic. I'm not sure if you've seen a change as well, just people being more knowledgeable about PrEP. Mm-hmm. I don't know if they're necessarily correlated, but I think people just in those last few years have really, sort of to embrace it. I think there's a lot of companies out there promoting it. And so it's
yeah.
What is your kind of...
I think at first there was a little bit of a shame.
Yeah.
I remember being at a dinner party with friends, and then 3 of us were on PrEP, and we weren't talking about it.
Right.
So once I found that out, I was like, why aren't we talking about this? And, back in the day, like Truvada Slut and stuff like that. But yeah, you're right. It has changed. And it's not just for LBGT. It's for everybody, straight people, anyone who's sexually active.
Right.
Yeah. But yeah, it is interesting how the LGBT community has been much more proficient. We're talking about it. And I hope that translates to all of the populations out there, because it's a good method to keep us to eradicate HIV,
For sure.
Yeah.
I mean, the LGBTQ plus community, typically we're at the front lines of
Yeah.
fashion, music, healthcare. Everybody jumps on our trends at some point. So
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's a good thing. Hopefully, too, I think we are also, in general, a more sex-positive community. I think
Yes.
we're much more open about talking about our sexuality, which even me is something that I'm continuing to work towards, processing my upbringing and feeling a lot of trauma and shame around my sexuality. So I think it's just great to see us really sort of having a moment here where we're really able to feel free and promote healthy sex in comparison to 30 years ago where we would never have had that opportunity.
Yeah. Get the judgments out of the way.
So does ASHwell do a lot of sort of sexual education? Is that a part of sort of what?
If we get people on PrEP, it's an open dialogue. So they're on a journey of like, okay, I'm on these things, but how can I keep myself STI free,
Right.
So the big one with HIV and PrEP, your bases are covered. But what about syphilis, gonorrhea, chlamydia? And so sometimes just talking about certain strategies, tools, whether it be condoms, lube shooters, a femidom, a dental dam, or just plain old dialoguing or creating social contracts within your maybe polyamorous group.
Right.
One of the good experiences that I seen recently was somebody came in with like everything, but because they had been on PrEP, they didn't have HIV.
Right.
Everything else was curable.
Exactly.
Hep C,
Curable,
syphilis, gonorrhea. And you could tell that they were ill.
Yeah.
And they just felt so sad and shameful.
Right.
And so it was great. It
Yeah.
was great. And so we just said, well, look, what are you doing right? You are here.
Yes.
And you're protecting your partners because you were getting tested.
Yes.
So go out and let them know. But as far, we're starting this treatment plan today. We're taking care of these. And in 7 days, those will be gone.
Right.
So it's just, but it's just, I get a little emotional about it because,
Sure,
it was
sure.
just a young person who was just experiencing life. But the great thing was that everything was going to be okay and no HIV.
Right. Right.
The non-curable one was not
Not
a
an option,
problem because
yeah.
they were smart, they were on PrEP, and they were getting
Incredible.
tested frequently.
Do you
So,
recall how
yeah.
they got access to PrEP before? I mean, I know this is a particular unique.
Again, word of mouth,
Yeah.
and maybe they saw one of the videos with. We have some really great drag queens doing little promos and commercials and stuff, and
Yeah.
so maybe they saw one of those. But
Yeah.
like 3 years ago, they ended up in the clinic and got hooked up, and ever
Incredible.
since, so yeah.
Incredible. Yeah, it's definitely interesting when you have patients that have very little knowledge of how they may have acquired an STD, or maybe they're even with one intimate partner that has given them, multiple STDs, and trying to just normalize it, talk it through. These things happen. You did the right thing. You're being smart. By just being here, by seeking out help, by seeking out testing, and that was always what I would try to bring it back to as well, is because there's obviously a lot of shame, even with one positive result, but nonetheless multiple. You can feel overwhelmed. And again, going back to the resources that are available, a lot of my patients would say, oh, I watched these YouTube videos, they made me feel dirty, or they made me feel gross, or they made me feel like the doctor was, or whoever the medical professional was in the video was making me feel bad about myself. And this is virtual, and we're not even in the same room.
Yeah.
And so I really saw a place, too, we have a lot of opportunity to improve resources that are available just on YouTube and out there. And just trying to always bring it back to the patient that, these things happen, and it's nothing to be shameful about. You're actually doing the right thing by having this conversation with a provider, getting tested. If anything, this should remind you to continue getting tested and
Exactly.
tell others how important it can be.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
and really interesting too, you've brought up drag a couple times, and that was obviously what led me into knowing what ASHwell was, because I saw Mistress Isabel Brooks, who I'm a huge fan of.
Oh, is she great? Yeah.
Obsessed. And so I know that there's a tight sort of bond between ASHwell and drag. I'm not sure if you know much about that. Obviously, you're a nurse and working in the healthcare aspect of the company, but what are your thoughts on ASHwell and how it's incorporated drag and everything that it does?
To me, they're such liberating people. They take the shame out of things. They bring humor into it, and humor is the best medicine.
For sure.
And the way we get to learn about different cultures and stuff like that, we laugh about it, and then we can talk about maybe a little bit more of the serious things, and then we can laugh about it again and
Right.
Process it. So yeah, there's been some great drag queens working, and I can't remember her name, but I was the biggest fan. She was on Dragula. She she did a couple of promos for us, and she was so funny. But
I mean, there's
yeah.
So they're all so talented. I mean, and
They are.
there's a lot of them now. There's, especially I've been watching Drag Race now only a few years, but I've caught up to all 30 plus seasons of All Stars and all the regular seasons. But like you mentioned, for me, when I watch them perform and I watch them live their authentic self and put all that effort into just being who they want to be, it's completely liberating. Like you mentioned, I feel like I can do anything. Look at all this work that these people do against all this obstacles. Not only is being gay tough, or being a part of the LGBTQ community tough, but then to go ahead and add another layer of putting yourself out there to be really a target in what today is considered, a political battleground. And so has ASHwell, I mean, obviously I've been following your social media and really happy to see that they've been promoting, education around some of the new laws coming out to try and, ban drag performances. Does that affect ASHwell at all?
It has.
Yeah.
We had, when Governor Abbott wrote that letter to, it wasn't law, but he was intimidating all trans people with, if you were still a minor and seeking trans services, he was asking healthcare facilities to report their parents or their grandparents as an abuse. And it's just like, no. This is not your realm of expertise, but it does scare people from reaching out for help. With the abortion ban, before it was an abortion ban, there was a whole thing about after 6 weeks of pregnancy. And then so medical people could be charged, and part of the $10,000 fine if you gave any information on abortion services. And so it's just like, so what do we do then?
Right.
So if we can't talk about it, do we just casually do a Vanna White to a QRS code where they can get information? I mean, is that how we have to work around it? Or, it's just, do they not remember before abortion was legally how so many people died of bleeding out from an iron?
Exactly.
I mean, it's a hanger. And so, I don't know why sometimes we don't remember our history.
Or sometimes they do.
And
that's their point. They want us to go back into that area where fear rules and we are scared to even go to a doctor. I mean, I feel like a lot of these, especially in regarding to care between patients and providers and the government's overstepping, in my opinion, of certain laws really prevents the patients from feeling comfortable already. I mean, already you don't want to talk to someone about a lot of your problems. Most of us don't. And then you see a physician sometimes for the first time. You're still trying to get to know them. The last thing you want to do is to say something that may be politically charging or may result in you getting reported to a government agency based on some questions or concerns that you have. And so it really just makes our job so much harder for us to connect with patients. So many already things on our minds when we're meeting people and meeting our patients to accomplish in a visit, not to mention now these legal hurdles. So, it's really sad. But what I do know is that it does open up the dialogue like what we're doing here today, and just having more people talk about it and think about it hopefully will change minds, or at least give people the energy to put their voice forward. I think I mentioned it previously with one of our guests. We live in such a great time where being a part of the LGBTQ plus community is on national television. It's talked about in the news constantly. It's celebrated in so many aspects by corporations, by the media. But I almost feel a sense of complacency with a lot of people my age and maybe even a little bit younger in our community, that maybe they aren't aware of how quickly things can be taken from us. I think of the drag ban bills going around now, and of course they don't affect too many people because there aren't that many drag entertainers. And most of the time you do go to a drag show at a club or a bar, and that's usually your interaction with the drag queen for most people. But drag queens do have other jobs. They go to the library and they read to children, and that is not only maybe a way that they get compensated, but a way that they can give back to their community and be proud of their art form. And doing other things, being a part of events where children are involved. I think, dressing up like a princess and creating a smile on a kid's face is much better than a lot of the alternatives that, some of these more conservative politicians are recommending. And so I forgot where I was going with that.
With that exposure, though, into culture and different ways of life, it's like the suicide rate for LGBT.
Right.
And them just saying there's a different thing. It's like, I knew I was deep down, like
Yes.
when I was like,
Same.
I was 5 or 6.
Same.
But I didn't have a word for it until
Right.
16,
Right.
So, but just knowing that, it just like gives them hope to like, yeah, there's different,
Yeah.
I'm not just the only one. There's
Exactly.
there's my people out there somewhere.
Right. And so I think a lot of younger people are able to see that now over social media, being able to connect with people like them. But what I worry about is that we aren't standing up for people like drag queens who are right now being the ones who are under attack, because it's them first, but who's next?
We need to talk about politics more, and we've kind of lost that art, unfortunately. And
For sure.
I get so enraged, and I'm as guilty as anybody.
Same.
But like, how do we respect each other and again, have that common ground, even if we don't see eye to eye on religion or politics? How do we tolerate and be loving toward each other,
Right.
no matter who you are, and not make it so black and white, polarized? But yeah, that's the journey that our whole country is on, and it's I'm struggling with it too personally with my
sure.
own family, which are wonderful people. But sometimes I think, how did you get that in your brain? But they're asking the same of me.
For sure. And I certainly relate with you there. My family and I have broken up many times. We usually get back together, but, especially over politics, the 2016 election was really traumatic for me.
Yeah.
And it was really the first time I had gotten invested in politics. I would say before that, I was kind of always leaning to what my parents told me to do. I think that's a lot of people, even in the LGBTQ plus community. And I trusted them. I assumed that they want what's best for me, and I truly believe they still do. But a lot of the decisions they were making back then for who they recommended me voting for just didn't come to my head. I didn't think about it. But in 2016, it was pretty obvious the differences between the candidates. And so it was just very confusing. We got over it. And now I think, too, like you mentioned, because of that and because of maybe the years prior to that, it's become increasingly more challenging to have a dialogue with people, because our views do feel like they're so far apart. But when I do sit down with my family and I remove the politicians and remove some of the labels and just talk about the issues, we're typically always on the same page. We all are pro-freedom, My mom, she's, maybe not been to a drag show. I think she's been to a drag show before. We've definitely not gone together, but she's all for drag queens having the ability to do whatever they want. It's their life. If they want to live authentically in the way that they choose, they should be able to. And it's up to parents to really limit what their children are exposed to. Whereas, again, she still supports the people who created these laws, but at least we're having a dialogue. At least we're creating a conversation, and maybe she'll think about it a little bit, next time she approaches the voting booth. Maybe not, but at least there's a dialogue there, like you mentioned.
Yeah, so there's more awareness. I think those personal relationships are so important, and I think it's just, again, exposure. My mom used to whisper about gay stuff, and then when I came out, I gave her a book that says, "Now That You Know, Everything You Need to Know About Homosexuality."
Wow.
And then she was marching on, Market Street in San Francisco with the hospital I worked with, in the 90s. So she's come a long way.
Wow.
And it's just about exposure and education. I think that's the same thing with transgender. A lot of people that speak badly and about, oh, no, they shouldn't be. It's just like, do you know any transgenders?
Right.
Do you know what they are going through? Do you know what their values are, or what parts of their bodies they want to change or not change? I mean, they have all these preconceived notions, but they don't know or talk to. So I think as we talk and with our personal relationships, like you said, at least there'll be a little bit of awareness, and that's a starting point.
Right, exactly. And I think too, like you mentioned, it's so hard to understand where people come from without exposing yourself to them and meeting them and allowing yourself to have these dialogues. And in smaller areas, rural areas, it's definitely a challenge. But I think social media, again, is opening the door for people to be able to communicate with each other, see who is like them out there, and maybe who's unlike them. I always think back to Drag Race, too, for me, because I had never really been around drag queens before. In fact, when I was younger and I would go to bars and clubs, they were not the reason we were there. It was never it was never valued with my friends, and it was never something that we really even appreciated. It was almost like an annoyance in some capacity, just to be honest. And looking back now, I'm humiliated that I would even consider saying that because of how talented these people are. But I feel like Drag Race, for me, has really opened my eyes to this art form. And then because I'm now seeing different forms of gender through Drag Race and all these different gender expressions, I get to kind of experiment with mine too and really embrace my femininity, which is something that I tried to put into a safe and lock away many, many years ago. So I think too, just all of us have that in us, whether you're straight or gay, there's a feminine side to you. And, I think some of those feelings are very vulnerable, very confusing, especially for straight men. And so having to even consider that, some of those ideas or relate with people is really challenging for them. Yeah. And I think the only way we're going to get there is continuing to educate. And I'm so happy to see that it's on MTV now, a cable television show that's, in millions of homes. But yeah, just keeping to expose. And it's so funny because it's so mainstream, RuPaul's Drag Race being everywhere it is now. I still think for me, it dramatically changed my life and allowed me to kind of understand that gender fluid community, the trans community better, and continue to grow in my own way towards understanding them better and being a better doctor in general to everyone.
It's a very exciting time to break down those barriers, and just to know that I don't have to be butch. I don't have to be femme. I don't have to be top. I don't have to be bottom. You know what I mean?
Yes.
It's a very freeing time. And then with those removing judgments of yourself and then others,
Yeah, for sure. It's interesting too, because there is still a large group of people who really want to identify with that role of being the masculine and really
which is
very
great.
Important. It's
and
great.
That,
And there's some people too who I find, it's a great way for us to start a conversation when I meet new people and I can tell that they're like, you like Drag Race? Like, this doesn't, why? What is it about it? And I'm like, well, I don't like sports, but it's the closest thing I get. And just kind of showing that you can be sort of in the middle. You don't have to be a hyper femme person or a hyper masculine person to like certain things or to be open to different things. But yeah, it's something me and my partner have really enjoyed. It's a great.
Well, I love what they say on Drag Race is like, we all have a drag, So
Yes.
today I'm wearing my ASHwell drag.
Yeah. So my current drag is I buy all my jeans now from eBay. They're all like Abercrombie and Fitch from like late 2000s where I used to shop there. And I don't have any jeans from there now, but like it's very much like relaxed, just like this kind of 2000s vibe is my current drag. It's like awesome. I'm going for. But you're right. We have a style. We have a drag we put on every day. I mean, that is true compared to when we're naked, and then the clothes we put on is how we want to represent ourselves, and so it's drag. But I love that. I always mention that to everyone as well, that you're participating whether you like it or not. You're in drag right now.
Exactly. At the clinic, I like to do my old man drag. I have my little cardigan, and everything. So we have such a diverse group of ages and
for sure
ethnicities and everything. So, but I have my little old man drag.
For sure. I put on my doctor white coat and I have my doctor drag. It totally does change my personality too, right? I become a little bit more professional, a little bit more in control, in charge, where I'm usually not. That I'm more of like a relaxed kind of person. So it's interesting how clothes can make you feel and kind of change your demeanor. But looking back at ASHwell, I know that there are a lot of things that are probably on the forefront for this year. Are there any events that are coming up or ways that people can get involved?
Yes, absolutely. So we have the Hill Country Rides for AIDS, and that's where, all the HIV organizations have teams and people volunteer to ride like miles and stuff. And if you're not like the really physically fit athlete that's creating a lot of the donations, you can be one of the people that are like there on the side giving them water or little protein bars. We've had cheerleaders in the past, so ASHwell is a big participator this year.
Awesome.
And if you want to be involved with the team, go to our website.
So the Hill Country Ride for AIDS is actually happening April 22nd. I unfortunately will be out of town, so I'm devastated, but next year we'll be planning ahead.
And we have a great outreach team.
Cool.
We also currently we have Austin Kink Weekend. So that's coming up, I think, the weekend of the 21st to the 23rd.
Okay.
And so, again, it's very pro-sex, from puppy. They have classes where you can learn more about certain things like puppy master kind of thing.
Yeah.
All kinds of products, like tables. It's kind of like a little street fair. And then there's different activities in different pubs. I can't remember them all. And then there's like the big event and stuff like that. But ASHwell will have a medical team there in case there's any like minor injuries. And of course, we'll alert 911 if you need to. But we're there for cuts and scrapes or bruised knees,
For sure, it happens.
or anything like that. And then we'll have outreach tables there, so you can learn more
Sure.
About our services, and then even get cards and then go the next step to call or show up at the clinic, and we'll get you an appointment.
I would love to, form a bridge with ASHwell, find a way that I can volunteer, if it's, medical related, if it's hanging out waters, if it's anything, I would love to be involved and
Absolutely.
find a role there, because what you're doing is incredible. And I just also want to meet more drag queens, and I think you guys can help with that.
You will get to meet some, yeah. I was speechless one day because they were filming one of the little promo videos,
Yeah.
and I was like, I know her, I love her. So when I was getting my coffee, I was like, I love you. And she was like, thank you. And she didn't know what to say. But then I got my coffee and ran. But yeah, they're beautiful.
They are. So I look at them like a very like the celebrities of the LGBTQ plus community. I think there are divas, our pop stars, or even some of our rock stars, for those who do drag king, And so for me, I really like to idolize them. I like to make them feel as though what they deserve, like they are a star,
Yeah.
And so I actually, last year for my birthday, we went to DragCon in LA, which is incredible. So all of the queens from the current season and multiple seasons back are all there in booths, and you can get. And I love to pay drag queens. Just take my money. It's for me. It's like tithing. It's like, if you can give 10% to the church, you can certainly give 10% to drag queens out of all the effort that they're putting in. And so it's a great opportunity to have a one-stop shop to meet all of them and give them money, which is great. Their drag deserves it. But I get so starstruck, and I love that feeling. And so it's funny because it's like I want to be friends with them, but I want them to also treat me like a fan.
Yeah.
I don't want us to be too close, because it ruins the illusion that they're like the superstar, and they are.
But allow me to gush.
But let me gush. Just listen to me for a minute, which is why DragCon is so great, because you get 5 minutes to gush, get your picture, and then on to the next. So it's really fun. We love it, and I think sometimes too that especially local queens don't get that reception as much. So when we fangirl over them, they're like, cool, this is unusual, but I feel like we should all be doing that and supporting our local entertainers, both in drag, burlesque, all types of entertainers.
So I'm going to name drop here.
Yes.
You know who Pink Star is and Y2K?
No.
They're amazing musicians.
Okay.
And they've done some promos for the clinic and fundraisers. But I just geek out when I see them and their videos and stuff. And
Cool.
Pink Star's so beautiful.
I will
and
look
she's
into
just
it.
she is a woman.
Sure.
I mean, she's,
yes.
And I mean, she's been very public about her journey, but she's a
Right.
woman now. And she's
Incredible.
just beautiful. And the music is really great. And Y2K is one of her collaborators, and they're great as well. And so amazing.
Yeah, I think gender studies is also just very interesting in general. I've always sort of, even before I was introduced to drag, thought it was interesting, as I had learned many years ago about Native American communities where they had 5+ genders, and where things were just not so structured and strict. You could really just be who you want to be. And I find that now the conversation is just, which is why it's becoming this political issue, right? Because we're getting a little too free, a little too open with how we talk, and people don't like that. But unfortunately, when the can of worms is open, it's open. You can't put it back in. And so I feel like we're just seeing people be able to express their gender so much more freely and feel so much more confident in whatever they want to be, whoever they want to be. And it also allows me, when I meet someone who is gender fluid or trans, to learn what other people think and how they view their own gender. Some people don't mind if you call them a he, she, them, even if they have transitioned completely to a female. Or some people are, identify as female and they still appearing like a man, but that's how they're expressing themselves, is not necessarily how they look, but how they feel. And so it can be in between there, and just learning all about that, I think, is so fascinating as a human, that we get to learn from each other in this capacity.
And how do we have patience with that and with ourselves? So,
Yes.
When I started working, at ASHwell, I had so much. I always thought, I'm so progressive, I'm so smart, I'm so knowledgeable. No. And I mean,
Me
it was
too.
a lot of humbling lessons
Yes.
learned, and the grace of other people, as well as coworkers, teaching me every day. And it's just you're just yeah. it's just, also with, the whole, woke movement and stuff like that, and me being an old white man, it's just like, how do I come to terms with that and be respectful and be aware of my fragility and then my bias, even though I not aware of some of these things, and how do I not be defensive and humble, or if I make a mistake with the pronoun, how can I hopefully have people give me grace of oh, I'm so sorry, especially if their appearance doesn't match who they identify with on their journey and stuff, and how to just be open and forgiving of yourself and hoping that they'll be forgiving. We're so much learning, and how can we just let go of it and not be offended, even.
Yeah, I think too, with so much change that has happened in the last 5 to 10 years, as far as Black Lives Matter, wokeness, or however you want to describe it, I found that I had no real understanding of how my white privilege had brought me to where I'm at today, and it's been really good for me to sort of digest that. It's funny because I don't have any, a lot of my close friends are not white. I didn't even realize this until the most recent last few years. I feel like too, as a gay person in a white family, in a Christian family where I went to a high school where most of my peers were white and straight, I found a lot of common ground with people who didn't go to my school who were in a different ethnicity to me, because I didn't have a lot of gay friends, but I could find friends that at least were in some minority position. Mm-hmm. I didn't even realize that looking back now, but that's what I've kind of thought, is maybe I connected with them because I felt like a minority in my group, and maybe, that's how we created these bonds. But even now, just learning about my whiteness and how it does allow me to do a lot of things that other people can't, and learning how I can make sure I'm not perpetuating that and making it worse for other people. Okay. And then opening the dialogue too, especially with my family. My mom has no idea what her whiteness means. That's never even something she's thought of, and that's not her, that's very typical, unfortunately. And so being able to say things to her around, as I'm learning and educating her, and seeing her as a conservative woman open up to so many things and ideas and say, that isn't right. Yeah, I shouldn't be thinking that way. And seeing her change is it's a great way to inspire me that people can change, because I come from a very hard-headed family. I'm extremely hard-headed. I don't know how I've even gotten this far, because years ago I was such a different person, and we can all change through just connecting with other people, learning their stories, laughing at each other, laughing with each other. Yeah. That's my spiel on that.
Yeah, totally. So, and that's great. I mean, to be able to do that and be open to it, and then also be patient with you, and then your parents, the older generation, that's just a little different. And again, at ASHwell, we have a wide thing of ages and truly a rainbow and life experiences. So I think one of the reasons our Hep C program is so successful is we've had people that has used IV drugs in a former life and stuff, so they can reach out to certain populations, and not saying that all people with Hep C got it from IV, but a large portion. And so I think that's the realness that the staff brings, is that they're so different, and they've had patience with me. Because again, they say for older people, they say you should always have a mentor in their 30s or something, or 20s,
like a reverse mentor.
Yeah, exactly, and that's
true though.
What a lot of the team has been for me.
Incredible,
learning so much from them, and them having the patience to call me on it.
That's good though. Brave. That's what friends do.
Yeah, they'll tell you, so that and then they help me learn, and they're patient with me.
That's right.
And I think that, as a community, we all should do that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think too, I think we get nervous or scared to make a mistake with another human being who may be different than us, because we're worried how they're going to respond. But in most cases, people are people. We all understand that we make incorrect assertions, and we say things wrong sometimes. But if we're just patient with one another, ultimately that's going to allow for more education, more spreading of the positivity, and get people all sort of in line that we're all just doing our best.
Yeah. And I love that.
Yeah. So I think that's incredible. I'm really excited to be able to collaborate more, get to learn more. Hopefully have you come back. We could do some follow-ups about maybe the bike ride and some volunteer events that my partner and I can be a part of. But I'm really excited to. I've always wanted to do one of these bike sort of events. I've seen them, in California. I've seen them in Florida, and I think Austin is the perfect place to get started.
It is. It's so funny. We had cheerleaders last year.
That's
so
cool.
Fun,
That's awesome.
So
well, if I can't ride the bike, we could certainly cheerlead. That was always
Yeah.
something I wanted to do, but it's not allowed. Well, good stuff. Well, thank you so much for coming today. It's been incredible to learn what ASHwell can offer. I definitely am excited to get my partner and myself involved and see how we can contribute. And we love to give back, and we love being close to drag queens. So keep those around, and we will be there.
Definitely.
Thanks again, and
Thank you, Taylor.
come back soon, please.
Thank you. Cool. Appreciate it.